Hey YouTube, it is Thursday afternoon, about 6:30 or so. Sun's going down behind me, and that's the last sunset before the shelter-in-place rules that they just announced here in Sacramento County, Northern California, take effect. So good news is that bicycling is still allowed during the remain in place or the shelter-in-place rules. But the bad news is that life is going to be really different here for a while. And with all the stuff that's going on, this is just a really good time to look back a few months at PBP and share some fond memories of that ride with the latest person to take part in the PBP After Party, and that is Sam Kling. Sam's a rider from Chicago, did his first PBP in 2019, volunteered to be part of the After Party, and we had a great time. We actually talked twice, and that's really my fault. We recorded an entire interview, and I accidentally deleted the file, and we had to go back through it a couple days later and do it all over again. So what you're going to see now is our second interview. You'll see that mentioned in there once or twice, but second interview with Sam Kling, and his highs, lows, tips for future riders, and some of his memories from France and the ride. Here we go, into the party. Well, here we are, back at the after party. Here today with Sam Kling from Chicago. Welcome. Thank you for taking part. And I will go ahead and admit to all the viewers out there that this is the second time we've done this interview. We did it once. Sam was nice enough to come back because I was dumb enough to delete all the footage. We got a great interview recorded. We'll have another one, but we had a great interview recorded, and then I deleted the whole thing. So that was my fault. I'm taking that on myself, so I apologize for that. And thanks for coming back. So Sam, you emailed me, volunteered to be part of the after party and tell your PBP story. So first of all, you're from Chicago.
Yes.
And you ride with the, I think you said the Great Lakes Randonneurs?
Yeah, Great Lakes Randonneurs, which I believe is the first randonneuring club in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, did that precede RUSA, or was that after RUSA? Because there were randonneurs around before RUSA.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm already, out of my depth.
Okay.
All I know is that it was one of the first, if not the first, randonneuring club.
Mm-hmm. And when we did our first interview, you mentioned that you get a reasonably sized number of riders out on your brevets.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like, Seattle, San Francisco, kind of the West Coast scene,
mm-hmm.
where, I see your videos and you show brevets where there are like 75 people showing up.
Yeah.
For us, a showing is probably 25. That would be really good.
Mm-hmm.
On the longer rides, when we did the 600K, for example, it was a very tough 600K and only 3 people signed up.
Yeah.
So that's like definitely on the smaller side, but I'd say most of the rides, above 200K are probably 10 to 15.
So was there anyone in particular in the club that kind of got you interested in doing PBP? Because it was your first time, right, in 2019. So was there anybody in the club who really kind of gave you planted that idea?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got started with, I only first heard about randonneuring maybe in late 2018, Bicycle Quarterly. I saw some of the pictures of the beautiful bicycles there, and I saw that there were people who were riding more than 100 miles, which I thought was crazy
mm-hmm.
at the time. And so I signed up for the 200K. I Googled to see if there was a local randonneuring club and found Great Lakes Randonneurs. I signed up for the 200K, and that was the longest ride I'd ever done at that point. And once I did that, I was like, oh man, that was awesome. I want to see if I can do the 300K. So I signed up for the 300K, which was out in southwestern Wisconsin, which is very hilly. And once I finished that, it was really hard, but I thought, okay, I have to try to see if I could do the 400K. And, tried that, then did the 600K. But all throughout when I was doing this, I was just motivated by seeing if I could do it. Because I didn't think there was any chance I could do PBP because, as we discussed last time, the organizers, they said there's no chance whatsoever that anyone is going to be able to sign up for PBP if they didn't do 4 days in the previous year.
Right.
So I just did it for the sheer joy of it. And I became friendly with a guy in the club named Brian, and he was doing PBP. And once it turned out that I could do PBP, they mysteriously reopened registration. Brian really urged me to go to France and see if I could do it. That's kind of the genesis.
Yeah. Well, and I mentioned in one of my videos last year just about that whole thing about people getting very excited about, oh my God, am I going to make it in? They never, that I know of, not let somebody in. Whenever they think they say, oh, we're reaching the cap, then they raise the cap again. And we'll see next time if it goes back down. It went really high this time. And even though the weather was really good, the abandon rate was almost historically high. And I wonder if we've reached a point where there's only so many people in the world who can do that ride. I don't know. Because obviously there were a lot of people who were there this time who just weren't up to it for some reason and abandoned the ride.
Yeah. Well, ACP sent out this little publication, little pamphlet, which I just got maybe in January, that had kind of country level data.
Yes.
About the finishers.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of goes in line with my observations when I was over there. But there are a lot of people from very hot countries.
Right.
Just did not seem to be doing okay with the cold.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who just maybe didn't seem like they had the right equipment or something. And I don't know if that has to do with the local conditions of the clubs there. I know in places like India, it's probably really, really hard to ride a 600K, and I don't know, how they do it when the infrastructure isn't good. But
it's been cold before. It got really cold in 2015, like the first night or so. It was about as cold as this one. Maybe not quite the headwinds, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But like the riders from India, as you mentioned, a really high rate of abandon for them. And one thing that I'd have to go back and look at the other, summaries that they send out. One thing that stuck out to me as I was kind of glancing at that was they list, and I know there has been a whole lot of discussion on the email list after the ride, that if you finished out of time, so you finished 93 hours or something, if you rode the whole thing, they'd give you a medal. And you weren't an official finisher, but you got the medal. And then I noticed in the book that they were listing those names. And they were listed as OT or something, like out of time. So there's a whole bunch of discussion. I'm firmly in the camp that says if you didn't finish the whole ride, you shouldn't get a medal. And I think if you didn't finish the ride on time, within the time limits, you shouldn't be in the book. But that's just me. Anyway, well, so let's talk about your ride. So your first time going over there, and you started in the 84-hour group.
Yep, started in the 84-hour group at 5 a.m.
Right. And you were in the X group, which was just ahead of me in the Y group. And you finished in, you said about 80 hours?
Yep, 80 hours and 53 minutes.
Okay, but then tell everyone how much time you spent off the bike and how much sleep you got.
Yeah, I spent, I think, 26 hours off the bike.
Mm-hmm.
I got about 2 hours of sleep.
Yeah. 26 hours off the bike, actually, if you think about it, that's not that much, but probably a little bit more of it should have been spent sleeping.
Yeah, I'd say, there were a lot of lessons from that ride, but one of them definitely had to do with time management. And, as much as I thought about it, in the moment, I was not practicing good time management skills.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what do you think was the biggest time waste?
A lot of it was just going into controls without really a plan, just kind of going into the control and being in this mindset that, okay, like now's rest time. I wouldn't like scout out the control. I would just kind of go to the first thing I saw.
Yeah.
If there's a really long line for food, I would wait 30 minutes for food, which happened a couple times because we got kind of stuck in a big blob
Mm-hmm.
of food. And then, one thing I wasn't prepared for is just how much of the food you couldn't eat off the bike. They would give you things like pasta salad and soup, and you can't put that on in your jersey pocket.
Right.
So I would sit there and with my fork, and it would take a long time to actually eat, and then I'd waste probably 2 hours at a control. I mean, the worst example I think is the first night. The goal was to get to Ludiac, and we got to Ludiac maybe around 1 a.m., 1:30 in the morning. And when I got there, I was just in the wrong mindset. I was thinking like in terms of the brevets back in Wisconsin, that it's like I'm going to a hotel now. This is when I take a shower. This is when I eat a meal.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when I sleep for a few hours. But the problem is everything is so spread out and inefficient, and there are lines for everything.
Yeah.
That like when I took a shower, that probably added literally an hour and a half to my time there, just in terms of changing out of my clothes, changing into new clothes, renting a towel, waiting in lines for all of these things. So that first night at Ludiac, I think I spent probably 6.5 hours there, and I rented a cot.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got into the big gymnasium where the cots were, I was like appalled to find that it wasn't heated, and it was 40 degrees outside.
Mm-hmm.
So it was pretty much 40 degrees inside
Right.
the gymnasium too.
Right.
And they give you this like blanket that's like mesh or something. It doesn't make you warm at all.
Yeah.
And, I didn't sleep at all.
So I was mentioning last time, so a time-saving tip. So bonus tip here in this after party. Carry something like this. These are like big wet wipes. 2 of them are enough to basically replace a shower. So, if you're going to do like 3 sleep stops, you carry 6 of these. They're very small and light, and 5 minutes, wipe yourself off with these. At least you'll smell better. So, tip for 2023. And no, this is not a sponsored placement here. So you end up getting 2 hours of sleep, which is not very much, but you said at the end, when I did a PBP like that, I finished and I was on the verge of collapse, but you said you were fine.
It was euphoric. I mean, I had a lot of ups and downs with the ride.
Mm-hmm.
I had, I'd say, a pretty significant down
Okay.
in terms of I injured my ankle because it was a bike fit issue basically, and kind of the top of my ankle where it meets your shin, that started to feel really sore, and I made the problem worse. I was kind of in a delirious state already. This was maybe mile 200, 250.
Mm-hmm.
No, probably 300. It was on day 2 sometime. And so to deal with this pain, I took my reflective, Rusa ankle straps, and I just like cinched it around my ankle to like make some kind of compression strap. The idea being that like this would make it hurt less. But I really tightened it too much, and I ended up basically creating a tourniquet and just like really injured my ankle. So I couldn't walk for long stretches of that ride. When we would get to controls, I was like hobbling around on one foot, and when we got into Brest, because of this, I was like completely convinced that I wasn't going to be able to finish the ride.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that I did finish it in like with that very kind of stupid decision to tie that around my ankle, I was just like euphoric. I was on cloud nine.
So other than the finish, any other particular high points? I know you mentioned seeing the people along the route was a high point of which it always is. That's one of the great things about the ride.
I didn't really get it. I saw your videos, and I heard people talk about how there are these children who are like handing you out cookies and things like that. But it's true. I mean, in all of these small towns, there are people lining the roads, and they're cheering you on, and like people standing out at 2 a.m. Some like I think drunk teenagers who are coming home from the bar. They set up a little coffee table to hand out coffee to the riders,
Mm-hmm.
and that's like you're heroes and all these ridiculous things. Of course, we aren't heroes, but it really makes you feel like you're doing something very important, and that you're just part of this thing that's a lot bigger than yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of it's what makes the ride really worth all the time and effort that it takes into doing it. I mean, you're in France and you're seeing the French countryside, but the people just make it really special. I've got a lot of good memories. Did you stop at the crepe guy in Teniers?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, well, that's something to look forward to next time. So you've done it once, and when we talked last time, you said you definitely plan on going back again in whatever, 3.5 years or so.
Yeah, and I mean, like, there's so many things that I could have done better. And I was just thinking about that, like, after the ride for weeks. I was just thinking about, like, how am I going to do this next time so that, it's even better, that I'm more efficient, that I'm really getting sleep, things like that. And yeah, absolutely, 2020.
Well, one thing you mentioned when we talked last time was that you were having a hard time, like, reading the booklet and figuring out the control times, the opening and closing times. So one thing that I've done is I'll create just like a little cheat sheet, like on a 3x5 card or something like that, and it just lists the controls and the miles to each one, because they're always listed in kilometers. I can't really think about that. And then what the opening and closing times are and what day those are. So, and that usually goes, I've got a handlebar bag with the clear top, so that goes right in the top there, and it's always kind of right there, so you can see how you're doing in terms of the controls. So, and that usually goes, I've got a handlebar bag with the clear top, so that goes right in the top there, and it's always kind of right there, so you can see how you're doing in terms of the controls. But also keep in mind, just like the rider limit, the control closings tend not to be enforced that much. Like when we did it in 2007, my friend and I were, part of the reason we didn't get much sleep is it was raining, the weather was terrible, we were on fixed gear bikes, and we're going a little slower than everybody else, and we're chasing control times, and we're like, we don't have time to sleep, And we find out when we finish the ride, oh, well, they extended all the times by like 2 hours because everybody was going so slow. As long as you keep on moving, they're not gonna like pull you off the course because you got to a control 10 minutes too late or something.
Yeah, so we were confused, and we thought that we're kind of behind the times for the control closings.
Yeah.
But it did turn out that we were reading it wrong. So.
Yeah, well, it is confusing the way they put it down, and that's why I always kind of translate that into something that I know I'm going to be able to figure out when I'm, like 2 days out and haven't slept very much at all. Got to make all that stuff really easy to figure out. So here's another bonus bonus tip, and I'll show this to the camera up here. So this is a little headlight, but if this was a tail light, I always put a little label on here with the run times. Because I got a whole bunch of different, you know, you got to buy a whole bunch of different blinkies. I got like 10 different blinkies. They've all got different run times. And I always put a little label on here. So, you know, like in flashing mode and steady mode and whatever, how many hours of life I've got on that blinky before I have to recharge it. So one less thing to have to even try to remember when you're out on the bike. So just another bonus tip here, label everything so you don't have to think about it. So any other things that you would offer as advice to anybody who's looking at these videos and thinking about doing it in 2023?
Well, first of all, if anyone's watching like this video without watching PBP tips, I recommend watch PBP tips because it was, I mean, seriously so useful in terms of preparing. And although I did a lot of things wrong, you know, I would have done way more things wrong had I not had that resource.
Yeah.
So thank you for making it.
Oh, you're welcome. And doing it wrong is just part of the fun. That's why you go back the second time, because now you'll know where the food is and where the rest, you know, where the sleep part is, and next time is going to be a breeze. Just wait.
Yeah, I hope. Another thing I'd say is for people from flat places like Chicago or Florida or, you know, wherever else, it really helps to have your qualifying brevets be in very hilly places.
Yes.
Because, I mean, I'm sure for someone from California, you know, PBP is not all that challenging in terms of the terrain, but it was pretty hilly for, you know, someone with my kind of riding background. So we have a really good RBA here with Great Lakes Randonneurs, and she planned this ride through this series of rides through southwestern Wisconsin. And it was really tough, but I think without that, I would not have been in the shape to actually complete PBP.
Yeah, and I've been to Wisconsin, haven't ridden a bike there, but been there, and the terrain is very similar, I'm sure you would say. Just a lot of constant hills, and that's, yeah, something for anybody who hasn't been there. There's the highest point on the ride is only like 1,000 feet. There's no real, you know, climbs to speak of, but it just never stops. You're always going up or down something. There's very little actual flat. And this time there were headwinds, or at least for the 84-hour group, there were headwinds, you know, right from the start, like all the way out to Brest. And then,
Yeah.
So that,
And then I kind of turned around on the way back.
and then you had headwinds on the way back, yeah. But you didn't get rain. So you can look forward to that. You know, 2023, maybe you'll get some rain, you'll get the whole PBP experience. Because you're just not, if you haven't been out all night in the rain, it's just, you know, you've gotten half the experience. So, anything else that you wanted to mention to viewers before we sign off?
Yeah, just like, you know, in spite of the hardships and the things that went wrong and whatever, it is such a profoundly good experience and something I will remember in the fondest terms for the rest of my life. And just like, if you have the opportunity to do it and you want to do it, absolutely do it. It was incredible.
Excellent. Well, and for those who are viewing right now, well, it's about 6:30 on the 16th of March here in Northern California, where we just learned about an hour or so ago that the entire San Francisco Bay Area is on a stay-in-place order. So 7 million people have been ordered to stay indoors unless you're going out to go shopping or go to the doctor or anything like that. Now, they have said that walking for exercise is okay. So I'm thinking that bicycling is okay as long as you stay like 6 feet away from the next rider. But for everyone across the country and around the world. We're all dealing with this, so stay healthy, wash your hands a lot, don't touch your face, and we'll make it through all this. And in 2023, we'll all get back together in France and hopefully have a lot of stories to tell about how we made it through the coronavirus whole thing. So anyway, thank you again, Sam, for coming back a second time.